All right, I'm Chase McAteer with Oxford Partners. I am here with the one and only DJ Hale. This month we have a topic we've lined up to talk about: ethical practices, transparency, avoiding conflicts of interest in the real estate business. Something that is near and dear to our hearts, and something we think is pretty important. So really excited to jump into it. I'm glad you could join here, DJ.
Yeah, no, it's the subject. It's fairly intuitive. Obviously we want to practice ethics in how we approach working with groups and working with clients. But it's a timely topic in general, just because we see it happen so often. And so this is I'm anxious to get into this one a little bit. So this is going to be good.
For sure. Yeah. So first topic was just generally transparency. Transparency in the way we think about it is every stage of the lease deal. From starting to look at properties, what properties are being put in front of clients, what terms are being negotiated, how they're being negotiated, how it's being explained to the client, trying to build trust, eliminate any type of confusion. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to ultimately from, the initial outreach, be it a cold call or more and more kind of involved texting and obviously the emails are still there. But, however your initial outreach is, the whole goal from the beginning is to not only cover the subject of trust in such a way that, within 2 or 3 minutes of talking, they forget that you just called them out of the blue. So some people I know do have that skill, but general trust earned, and that's proven over time. And so it's something that is always the goal, right? It makes our lives so much easier if there's that level of trust. And so that is certainly our agenda when we set out to advise a client.
Yeah, for sure. And just, one thing that you can think of when you're running in your mind through the deal process: what properties is my broker showing me and showing me is available, and what are they not showing me? And they should be showing me everything, but why wouldn't they be? What are the potential interest in mine there? Or, is there a potential for a difference of commission in one property versus another? So they're not going to show one to you at all. You don't even know it's available. As a client, some are more savvy, some are more aware of these things than others. And brokers have that control, and they have to have that trust from the client that they're going to show them everything that's in the market. They're going to show them the whole everything that's available. And if there's any decisions being made to filter that down, they're going to tell them why, based on their experience, based on some prior, maybe some issues that other clients have had in a building, and that's why maybe an ownership group should be avoided, or certain things like that, of course, using their experience. But that's, I think, a big part of building that trust is working with a group that's going to have those ethical practices, and you're not going to have to worry, are they showing me everything? Is everything above board?
Yeah, I'm very guilty of almost overkill with the market data and just being as comprehensive as possible.
Yeah.
Just because even though there are some times when, based on the first discussion or two that you have with the client, that, potentially a property, it seems to not check any of the boxes, maybe one. I've found it with experience and just over time and being in commercial real estate so long, a lot of times that property that may not be a fit does inform the negotiation for the properties that are. And I think that you can never have too much data. A client can never be too informed with what's going on in the marketplace. And it's a good feeling as a broker, because there is so much time we do spend, and so much of this knowledge is very specific to those that are seeking office leases or industrial leases or looking to purchase a building. So it does behoove us to just let them know everything we know and to assist them in making the most informed decision. A lot of times too, that extra effort will keep a property in mind that may fit a requirement for another client you have, or somebody that's coming up in the pipeline, that initial extra legwork could pay dividends, and then the time is not wasted.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And so, topic number two that we had in our minds was conflicts of interest. Obviously, it's a very important topic for Oxford Partners and for the industry in general. We could obviously talk about the fact that we're exclusive tenant and buyer reps and what that means. But how do you think about conflicts of interest in the industry or as brokers?
It's obviously something. It's a principle upon which we were founded. So yeah, it's you can do the math. If there's a lot of these, publicly traded firms, obviously, they have, seven-figure landlord assignments with, 1.5 million, 2 million feet, and then they represent a 6,400 square foot tenant in that same portfolio. It's human nature. Like, which conflict of interest do you want to discuss first? Because it's obviously in which if I were to have them represent me, I would have questions. I would just, your loyalty, why would it be with me at 6,400 when you have a cash cow? So,
Right.
it doesn't make much sense to me. And a lot of times too, these are purported to be, separate from, yes, it's the same firm, but, trust us, we don't talk at all. We have no idea what the other is doing in terms of this negotiation, and you can just ignore that we work 50 feet away from each other. So it's just hard to believe.
Yeah. There's a wall.
And
There's a wall down the hallway.
yeah, we're on different floors,
That's
right? We're
right.
all together. So, it's just, and it's not even something where I would just have doubts, all of the things being equal. I'm going to, to me, I'm a guy that would pick somebody that just does not have a clear conflict of interest from the beginning.
Right. Yeah. And
So,
I've always found that, folks that really focus on representing tenants and buyers, they always are coming at the negotiations from that side of the table. They are going to be more aggressive. They don't have to answer to that landlord, or somebody in their office doesn't have to answer to that landlord, right? With this massive assignment, it could be a national client. So it could be in a particular submarket in your town, and you're in Galleria and there's office space, and this group has 1 million or 2 million square feet of space out of
yeah,
the 18 million in the market or something. But it could also be, well, we represent that same client in 20 different cities around the country, and it's that same situation. So, I mean, yeah, that conflict is definitely there. It's unreasonable. I don't know how you would not have those issues if you were an agent at one of these firms where
well,
that's going to
we
happen.
only have so many hours in the day. We only have, as many clients as, if lucky, that could really fill up our workload on any given year. And so if we're spending 100% of our time with solely tenants, to me, that's more time in that space. That's more time in those negotiations. Whereas if you do represent both landlords and tenants, you'd be say maybe less than an expert in both, but informed on both sides of the deal, but not as informed on the tenant side of the deal as you possibly could, just from a sheer time
For
point of
sure.
view.
For sure.
You
Yeah.
would
And
be
you go
able to
through every
have a
deal,
nice
you go down the
by
list.
representing both.
Yeah, you go down the list, every issue you could possibly negotiate. There's a way that it would be very landlord focused. There's a way that it could be very
Yeah,
tenant focused. There's,
yeah,
and you're obviously as a tenant, you're trying to pull more of those deal points your way. So you got to have somebody who's negotiating with your best interest and thinking about how do I do that? And
yeah,
I also had a note of, Mattress Firm being one of the high profile examples. Like these things are, very vague topics. They don't really matter sometimes until they do, and then they really matter. Anybody could go and look up the Mattress Firm story that, I don't think it was settled until just 2023, where you had this issues where there were kickbacks being given to brokers from developers, steering clients toward higher priced options in the market. And so, that happens. Those stories come out every so often, and it just highlights the importance of everything we're talking about.
yeah, very much so. And you also would want to be considered to be hired by other landlords in the city. Just every indication there's not much of an impetus for that particular broker to really favor the tenant in any regard. If you're lucky, he's neutral and he's professional and he does his job. That's if
Right.
you're lucky. That's
Right.
best case scenario.
Like best case.
Is that he is not as informed in the tenant rep side of things as he would be otherwise, in that he does not show an obvious conflict of interest in it, that it would influence the way that he either rushes you through a deal, advises you poorly. A lot of times I find that when they do have the conflict of interest, that they are trying to rush through a lot of these things. And
Oh yeah.
so you just, sometimes these deals and negotiations, they take a long time.
And if you're rushing through it, you're costing the client, I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
Easy,
yeah,
easy.
yeah.
Let's shift to for Oxford and just as a firm, some of the core values that we have, and obviously when we think about this, we're having an impact on our firm internally, and obviously there's external factors, there's external, benefits that causes as a side effect of us as a firm really paying attention to those core values, who we are as individuals, who we are as a team. Obviously for us, some of the core values we have: collaboration, consistency, a service-minded focus. So these are all things that, we look for when we're hiring our team. It's things we were looking for when we're developing the team internally. And obviously it's helping us to guide as a group collectively, what type of team we're building and how we're being perceived in the market to clients, and then obviously to anybody who we may be trying to bring over, other agents trying to grow the firm more. So, I mean, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it's always a surprise, I think, when I interview or when someone from a larger publicly traded firm will come work for us and doesn't really believe that we're not, trying to double cross them and steal clients or, step in front of a timeline to reach out to a prospect where it's pretty obvious that you had been engaged over the course of, say, a year. It's not, nothing here is backhanded, and that is a very unusual arrangement in our industry, as you well know. And so,
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes those kinds of things can be difficult to tell in an interview room, but I think that they take the temperature of the room quite quickly when they begin to work here, that we just don't do that. And whether or not it's overtly discussed, I think it's just more, what I've noticed is that that's just the kind of guys and gals that we've been fortunate to hire.
Right.
And that, we don't want to work in big corporate jobs, and this is very much an opportunity to be yourself and to not worry about a lot of oversight in terms of and some of the issues with corporations. And so you don't want to rock the boat here. It's a nice, pleasant place to work, and that filters down and involves every aspect of office life and deal running, and ultimately it benefits our clients because it's a cooperative arrangement. I know for a fact that we do more of the heavy lifting for each deal relative to, say, our peers across. If they do 25% of the deal and have a lot of back office, that we take pride in doing reverse, right? And you'll see in some of these other firms where that tends to be the case. And I think
Yeah.
just having that skin in the game is helpful for the morale around here and the culture.
Right. Yeah. And then obviously having those core values and using them to determine who you're going to hire, and helping the team that you have to improve and to kind of provide that roadmap of where you want everybody. This is the road we're on, and this is where we want to be. And obviously, it helps you attract top talent from other firms that want that type of environment, maybe that have had some bad experiences, like you're alluding to, at other firms. Certainly happens. Yeah. And then the other factor here is well, how does this actually impact the client, right? Because it's easy to
Right.
think, yeah, cool. There's a page on their website talks about culture. Cool, check the box.
Yeah.
But what does that
Use
really
the
mean to
same, you
me?
got to use all the same buzz
You
though,
have
right?
to, right? I mean, it's got to,
Yeah.
the SEO has to pick it up, or you're not doing it
Yeah.
right, And so, but for me, I mean, there's a lot of ways that really shows through in obviously you're building a brand, and if somebody's going to work with Octa partners, you want them to know the consistency aspect. Okay, well, you have people working at the firm. There's a like-mindedness here. There's a consistency into how they think about things, how they attack the negotiating, how they attack assignments, the amount of work they put into it. There's a lot of that comes through. The collaborative piece, I think, is huge, right? Because it really helps with problem solving to know that there's you're not just working with one agent, but if they have an issue, they encounter something they haven't seen before, they want some guidance from some other agents at the firm, and maybe the best way to deal with something or try and counsel a client through something, they've got it, and it's built into our DNA to be like that. And we do that on a weekly basis. You can do that on a daily basis. People can stop into someone's office and get that type of help.
Yeah, it's
And
organic
so
culture,
it helps
right?
clients tremendously.
True organic culture throughout here. Whereas, the alternative course is that you sit through classes and your corporate overlords preach the company's culture.
Yes.
And
Half fall
it's
asleep.
not come by, yeah, and it's not come by organically or naturally, right? And so you're repeating, a T-shirt, or this is our culture, and it's
Yep.
not your culture, but we can honestly say our culture has come by just by a group of people that, and I've said this till I'm blue in the face. Realistically, I would hang out with every person in this office, which
And
is
we do.
unheard of,
Yeah.
without proximity of working together,
Right.
and that I would be independently friends with all the guys and gals here, and that's terribly unusual. It is a very unique situation, and so yeah, I know that it's a good positive start to the day, and it's a kind of place you will stay late just in general because you're having such a good time. So it's the culture is very strong here.
Yeah. And again, it translates to what the clients are getting in terms of the service, in terms of, the quality of work that they're getting from an agent. So I think that's important. And I think it just helps build a brand, helps build consistency into the process. So I think it's vital. So
Yeah, I
our
mean, stepping in to keep tours going, all these little
yeah,
things that can kind of delay things throughout the course of running a deal that we'll just step in seamlessly and not expect much in return, right? So that's
right.
part of what keeps the client on schedule.
For sure. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So our last topic that we had for today was navigating risks with transparency. I know there's a ton of different things in a lease deal that, we talked about at the beginning that, there's from A to Z when you're running a process or you're negotiating, there's a ton of different things that you could either rush through and not be attention to detail about and really not care about, but that can have significant impacts to the client's business. And it might not be something they really even realize when the lease is signed. It could be 2 years, 3 years down the line before that even materializes. And so you really have to have a client, a broker who's keeping that in mind. They're trying to win long-term business and maintain a long-term relationship with the client. And I think having that transparency is super important.
Do it right the first time, and go slow the first time enough that everyone's on the same page. These kind of things that can be discussed proactively, because there are a number of provisions that do tend to, if there's not a lot of movement there on the negotiation, it's something the client is not terribly concerned with, and then all of a sudden they are. So these are all things that if anything you can do to avoid those scenarios 2.5 years in, you do.
Yeah, and there's a ton of different things that come up. And I know in our conversation Ryan and I had last month, we were talking about some lease provisions and how they're negotiated. And we talked about, I don't know if we talked about personal guarantees or not, or operating
Yeah.
expense caps, these types of things that, if you're trying to get a deal done and you don't really care, if an agent has that mindset, they may not ask for those things at all. But some of these matter quite a bit in certain circumstances more than others. And, the transparency piece of it is have that conversation with the client. And
Yeah.
this is what we're asking for, and this is why we think it's important. If they're
Yeah.
not giving us what we're looking for, is this the right property for us? What's the risk of us yielding on this point? Is there any middle ground we should be asking for to try and shore up certain risk and mitigate it as best we can? If you have to have a personal guarantee, can you cap it, right? I mean, are you going to allow them to have a relocation clause and move you anywhere in the building? Are you going to have any caps on operating expense increases throughout the lease? I mean, there's 100 different things that are going to come up, and some will matter more to some clients, obviously, than others. The transparency there to have the conversation, know what they're talking about, know it's important to have these discussions. And if you have to yield on something, fine, but the client needs to understand what they're agreeing to.
I've had several junior brokers in the last year learn this lesson the hard way. But inevitably, anyone new in the business is going to run a deal or three that's too small. They have to run it, so they learn themselves because perhaps they're starving, and even a little commission sounds good right about 9 months in, and not much to show for it. And you'll run deals that are kind of under the threshold that a typical commercial real estate firm needs to meet to really meet expenses and justify your time. And so, the tendency would be in those to rush through that, and just because you may not give it the same attention to detail as you would a much larger, tenant. And so, if it's a very small space, if you cut corners because it's very small, it will come back to get you.
Yeah, you
It
can't
will
do it.
always come back to get you. Inevitably, it will cause problems, and you're going to wish you'd treated it just like it was a full floor tenant.
You have to. You have to. And that's
Yep.
where the consistency comes in.
Yep.
That's where the commitment to service quality comes in. That's what we're training all the folks on is, from a junior agent, brand new, starting out all the way to our senior guys, having that level of quality no matter what it is. And that's important. And you're exactly right. I mean, it never goes away. That lease is there in perpetuity for as long as they're in that property. Even if there's amendments in place sitting on top of it, the lease is there.
Yeah, and
And
that stakeholder
it's
doesn't
important.
care that they're in a small amount of square footage, right? That's
No,
very important to them. And
right.
so it is the arrogance that you would have to treat them in a different way that someone you would end up with more commission. Just mark my words, it will come back to bite you in the butt because that is what happens when you try to not give each sized enterprise the same attention to
That's
detail.
it. That's it.
Happens all the time.
That's it. Those are great words to end on, I think, for today. So DJ, great to catch up with you on this. I appreciate your insights.
Yeah.
And until next month.
Sounds good.